I'm bored in the house and I'm in the house bored. Bored in the house and I'm in the house bored.
I know that's how all of us have been feeling lately. So I came up with a list of 4 beginner Python programming projects. In this video, I'm gonna go over each of these 4 projects and give you guys an idea of how to implement them. So let's get started. So the first project, and the most basic one, is a random friend selector. This can be implemented in like 5 lines of code. My favorite method of communication is through FaceTime.
Bored in the house, bored in the house, bored. Bored in the house, bored in the house, bored.
So using this script, I can basically choose one of my friends at random out of a whole list of friends, and that's who I would FaceTime. Okay, so I have my text editor open. So the very first thing that we need is we need a list of friends that we're gonna call. And here, I'm just gonna type in a few of my friends. 9 friends. I think that'll suffice for this project. So now that we have a list of friends, we can use this package in Python called random. And in order to use this package, all you have to do at the beginning of your script is import random. And in this package random, they have a bunch of different functions that basically allow you to choose something at random. For example, random.randint, you can give it a number between 1 and 5, and this will basically output some random number between 1 and 5. Now, the random function that we're gonna want is called random.choice, where if you give it an array, or a list, which is what we have, then it'll spit out a random item in this array. And basically what I want is random.choice friends. And this will randomly choose a friend. All right, we're gonna print who should I FaceTime today? And let's print out the answer. Okay, let's give the script a try. All right, it says my friend Megan. So let's give Megan a call. She picked up. All right, I'm making a YouTube video right now, and it told me that I should FaceTime you. Cool, thanks for picking up.
Of course.
So the next beginner project idea is rock, paper, scissors. This one's super simple, but it's a step up from the previous one. Here, we're still gonna be using random. So we definitely wanna import random, and we're gonna be using a function. So basically, we want some user input, right? Because we wanna play against the computer. So the user is gonna put in an input. Let's use R for rock, P for paper, or S for scissors. And then the computer is also gonna choose. And here we're gonna do random.choice because we have our 3 different choices, R, P, and S. So now the computer is gonna randomly choose one of these choices. Once we know the user's choice and the computer's choice, we can come up with some rules in order to determine who wins. So the first rule is if the user and the computer have both the same choice, then it's a tie. In this game, we know that rock beats scissors, scissors beats paper, and paper beats rock. So let's define a helper function isWin to see who wins. And here I'm gonna say player versus opponent. And this will return true if the player wins. And now we're just gonna use this little rule that we had to see. So if the player is rock and the opponent is scissors, or if the player is scissors and the opponent paper, or, so now we have 3 conditions, right? Or the player is paper and the opponent is rock, then we know that the player has won. So we're gonna return true. So now we're gonna ask up here if the user has won. So isWin user or computer. So the computer is the opponent and the user is the player. Then return you won. Actually, we're gonna return it's a tie up here. And then otherwise, we're just gonna return you lost. Because if the computer won, then we lost. Here, you'll notice that I don't have an if statement before this last return. And the reason for that is because if you've already passed these 2 cases, then after each of these cases, the function ends right here. Or in this case, if you won, then it ends right here. The only way that we can ever reach this line is if we didn't go through any of these, which is the same, it just saves you an extra line of code. Instead of saying else, or instead of saying if isWin computer comma user. Because the only way we get to this line is if this is true. So we don't even need that line. So here we're gonna print play. And here I'm actually gonna add a line break. and say, what's your choice? Now let's see what this looks like. What's your choice? R for rock, P for paper, S for scissors. I think I'm gonna go with scissors. Oh, I lost. Let's play again. Rock. I won! Okay, so the next ideas are slightly more involved than the previous two that you just saw. The next idea number 3, is implementing games in Python, but not games like rock, paper, scissors, games like Hangman and tic-tac-toe. So these two games are really good because they basically force you to take all these little building blocks that you already know, like imports, if statements, for loops, helper functions, and it really forces you to put that all together and start thinking like a software engineer. And in both of these games, you can play against the computer. You can have your friend play against the computer. You can play against a friend. And even in tic-tac-toe, there's an AI where you can play against the computer and the computer will never lose. I'm not gonna go over the tutorials for these because I've already done them in previous videos, but I'll link these right up here. Basically, what I wanted to say about these projects, and just a little hint to help you guys when you first get started, is really think about every single step. Like if you ever get stuck, ask yourself, what are the steps that I would do if I were trying to explain this game to somebody else? And then put that down in the computer. Like for Hangman, 1, I need to choose a word to be represented by Hangman. 2, I need the user to choose a letter from the alphabet. 3, I need to check in the word to see if the letter that the user chose matches anything in that word, and so on. And this way, by listing all of these steps, you'll kind of see how every single step that you list out is something that you want the computer to do. When you do that, it basically helps you figure out, well, what are the functions that I need to do, and how do I go about implementing those? You're basically breaking down a huge task into smaller and smaller and smaller chunks. Okay, and the final project idea that I have for you guys is a web app. So if you want to use Python, Flask is actually a really good infrastructure to get you started on building your own web apps. Basically here, all I did was I created a folder called web app, and inside I have this file called web.py, and this is essentially just a file that's telling my web app what to do. Okay, so now let me just try running the web app as a template, how it is. Basically, this just tells your terminal where to find the Flask app. And then we can just run Flask run, some magic will happen. So we can actually go here. This is our web app. And we'll see that actually this hello world comes from this function right here. Let's try changing this. We can try rerunning this. Look at that. It says subscribe to y cubed. Cool. So how do we make things a little bit more complicated than that? Well, what we can do is we can actually render a template. And in this template, you'll need a little bit of HTML. You can use HTML and CSS to tell the browser exactly how you want to display everything. Let me return template. So here I'm gonna create a template in my templates folder. And let me just really quickly set this up. So here in my body, I'm just gonna put a div, and let's just call it container. Let's call it a container div. Basically, you can think of classes as labels, so that when you're going into your CSS, which is the style sheet, you can tell everything that has that label to be styled in this way. Let's add another div. Let's do message part 1, message part 2, and then let's do message part 1 again, just so that we can see how these classes work. So we have this, and let's see what happens when we try rerunning this. All right, so this is exactly what our HTML is telling it to do. Now each of these are in divs. Now let's add a little bit of style sheet. So under static, I'm going to add a new home.css. And this CSS is just going to tell me exactly how to style this. Let's make this container. Let's make it the entire page. 100%, height 100%. Let's make everything in the center. Then with message part 1, I want this to be, let's do like a dark red. But then I want message part 2 to be in blue. Let's not give it a set width and height. I want this to be in the center. I want to add a border to this. Now, how do we tell this style sheet that it's associated with this HTML? Let's add a header to this. And this is just basically telling this HTML, hey, we can find the style sheet for this here in home.css. Cool, so there you have it. You have the dark red, dark blue, dark red. So you'll notice that the style on these two are the same because we gave them the same tag essentially. And here we have this 2-pixel red border. So yeah, using those building blocks, you can actually build really cool things. And this entire week, I've actually been working on my next project, which is this web app. So yeah, I've built this entirely in Flask. Basically, every single thing that I've sent you, except for maybe some of the Python code, that's what built this. And here, what this does is you can put your name and the recipient email in here. And once you click send, it sends that recipient a link saying that it's from you. And that link is one of two things. Well, every 9 out of 10 times, it's a cute dog that I found on Instagram. But every 1 out of 10 times, it's a dank meme that I found on Reddit. So if you guys want to hear more about this project, I'm going to make a video on it next week, and you should subscribe if you're interested. I'm interested in seeing what you guys will do with all of these projects, and if you guys have any other cool ideas, if you guys have anything that you built that you want to show me, make sure you comment below, and I'll definitely check it out. Yeah, good luck. Happy social distancing.
Okay, I'm bored in the house and I'm in the house bored.